What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Littleroot Lessons, episode 255, recorded at 12:30 on Bird Day. That is right. In about 2.5 hours, I will turn into my true form, a South Philly sicko guinea. Also,
Yeah,
Jay's here.
and in about 5 hours, I turned into Jay from Baltimore, despite only being to Baltimore like once or twice myself. But yeah, we both got our teams playing today, so we're recording early. Fortunately, we had an regional this weekend, so we actually have the tournament all done and data and everything as well. So uh, everything just so happened to work out today, besides the fact that I really wanted to go to Buffalo to watch this game. Because now I actually live close enough to where that was a possibility, but I have to work tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like a 4-hour drive for you.
4.5 hours, yeah.
Yeah, that's manageable. Yeah, I know not today. Well, I don't think my brother's going today. I know he might go if now that the game is in South Philly next week. If we do win, he might be going next week. Um, I have too much travel between work and other things that I have planned with my wife. So the only time I'm going to be going down to Philly is if we do win the Super Bowl. I will go down for the parade. I hope I'm going to a parade. But we will cross that road of travel when we get there. Right now, before we dive into the teams directly, I need to make sure I have the right one. Yes, that's the right one. Let's talk about some usage stats. And I think one of the first things to note with the top 8, and this is the top 8 for day 1. Oh, the top 8 in day 1 and day 2 stayed the same. Just the order just changed. This is the top 8 that we said was like the top 8 restricted in our tier list episode, our S tier and A tier restricted.
hmm And I think that the cool thing too is that we said that none of these Pokemon were like by and large an S tier Pokemon, and I think that that is very apparent here and will become especially apparent when we look towards our top 8 a little bit later, because not only are these top 4 restricted Pokemon all within basically a point and a half of percentage of each other, but no Calyrex Shadow made it into the top 8 of this tournament either.
Yeah,
So it would be very hard, I think, to qualify any singular one of these Pokemon as an S tier currently. So good job to us on our early restricted tier list.
yeah. I think one of the big things that we talked about is that this format, or at least restricted wise, what it's going to turn into is a case of no, mom said it's my turn to win this week. And it's just going to be a rotating cast depending on what just won the previous event. Last week, I was talking with Shanish, actually almost exactly this time last week. Zama just won, I believe it won VR or did very, very well in VR. And the first thing we said is, okay, so Miraidon's probably winning Birmingham next week, right? And we're like, yeah, because Miraidon's good into Zama. And it's going to be people going in to counter that off. And when you look at day 2 in terms of the day 1, day 2 conversions, you could really see that change. Like Zama did have a really good tournament, which is a little fun, which is a little surprising, seeing that Calyrex Shadow was the top usage. CSR dropped by, was it 8 points in usage, while we had bumps into Miraidon and Zama tying for top 1. I think one of the other things to note is that Kyogre went from 5th to 4th, with getting into that double digits, and Terapagos, which was the 6th most, it stayed 6th in usage, but dropped from 7.2% to 4.9%. Just ended up being a really bad tournament for Terapagos because of the amount of Zamazenta and the Miraidon as well there. If CSR ended up having a bigger tournament day 1, you would probably see Terapagos higher up as well. So I think it's not to say that, Terapagos is a flop, CSR is a flop. Just wasn't their weekend. And for all we know, in San Antonio next week, like, a Terapagos team is figured out and wins. Like, that's just how this format is going to work. But the team, I'd say the other Mon that wasn't in this top 5 to really talk about is Kyogre, specifically the changes we saw with this Combine set that seemed to be everywhere. Like, all of the good Kyogres, especially the ones we saw on stream, were running this Terra Grass Lefties Combine set with Origin Pulse and Ice Beam. They were super balancy, super bulky, and it was a lot different from a lot of the other Kyogres that we saw last year.
Yeah, it fits really, really nicely into these balanced teams. It certainly is still a flawed Pokemon, and we saw it in the finals match. Its inaccuracy and it really hurts it. But the team that has been built around it and the way that it's kind of moved from this assault vest towards a leftovers calm mindset has been really interesting. It certainly has a really cool place in this balanced team. And yeah, I think Groudon as well is another just like interesting Pokemon to point out in the top 8. It also had a pretty decent weekend. I know it had I believe one, if not two, top 8 finishes.
It had
I know at least one.
It had 2 top 8.
2, yeah. So it had a pretty decent weekend considering it came into day 2 at a 2.5 percent usage.
The people who brought Groudon were really good and had really great results, but like that, the question is, especially when you look at one of the players, is Groudon really good, or it's honestly the overall conversation with Sun. Is Sun good, or are the players playing Sun good? And then you can also ask that, it's like, okay, well, the good players are playing Sun, so does that mean is Sun good? Because the good players think it's good. Who can say? Anyways, moving past the restricteds, we go to the day 1 usage for the non-restricted Pokemon, and it's a lot of old familiar Pokemon that we weren't really seeing much of. We couldn't see them in Regulation H. They're now back. Waterfoo taking the number 1 spot, followed by Rillaboom, Incin, Flutter, and Amoonguss. And yes, these 5 here, or at least you would see 4 of these 5, as the backbone to the many balance teams that we saw this weekend, whether it was the Calm Mind Ogre, the Calm Mind or Nasty Plot, Calyrex Shadow, the Calm Mind Terapagos. Like, we saw a lot of Calm Mind Pokemon with about 4 or 5 of these top 5 Mons. Raging Bolt is back as well, along with the long-necked brother who was legal in Reg H, but just didn't get the results in Farigiraf. I'd say probably the new face of the Umbreon theorem in that sense. And
yeah, very much so.
And then a bunch of other very powerful Paradox and legendary Pokemon. Ogerpon Heartflame, Chi-Yu, Xianpao, Hands, and a little Cotton Ball in 12th in Whimsicott.
Yeah, I think that this usage stats are actually just very interesting to look at, because while you point out that, a lot of these balancy cores are made out of these, 4 or 5 of these top 5 or 6 Pokemon, the top 12 in usage has a lot of variety and a lot of high usage Pokemon. I mean, Whimsicott being the lowest at 18.5% usage in comparison to the Amoonguss at 25. It shows that there's definitely a lot of variety in the team building, and I think that's definitely a benefit of one of the format, because every archetype has a specific way that the teams get built. So there's a lot of different Pokemon who fill different niches for each individual restricted, allowing for maybe even more creativity than I think we gave credit for when we first looked at Regulation G. Especially with Regulation H in the rear view.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. It's the teams themselves might seem cookie cutter. Oh, it's the same sorts of Mons, but it just shows the different archetypes where you can have this restricted likes play more offensive, so you're going to see a more offensive Urshifu. You'll see the Tailwind. You'll see really powerful Pokemon like Firepon. But Firepon can also play in this balance core, with the Incinemungus, Rilla, Water Pond, or I'm not sorry, Water Pond, Waterfoo, and like Raging Bolt can be that piece. Like there's a lot of different Pokemon that can play different ways, and even like you can see a balanced team that might slap on even Genpow as a way to just put out more damage, or maybe they just switch up the type of Urshifu they use. There are a lot of different options. And
Yeah.
overall, we kind of saw like this relatively set 12 stay the same. The main difference is the Whimsicott was dropped and Urshifu Single Strike jumped into 11th place. We also saw certain Pokemon such as Fluttermane and Firepond drop in usage, while even though like the placements stayed the same in terms of percentage. We saw more Iron Hands, we saw more Chiampao, we saw more Raging Bolt and Farigiraf, and of course we saw even more Amoonguss and Waterfoo than we did in day one.
Yeah, Amoonguss took a massive jump. What is that? 20% almost. I
Yeah,
think it jumped three places up too.
Amoonguss went from 25.5 to 42%, and that does go to show how well Balance did this at this tournament writ large. Didn't have the final result that it wanted, but to an extent as well, it's also an EU regional.
I was gonna say
you kind of expect this regional to just be the Incinemungus setup game. I think it was round 3 or 4 yesterday of Swiss. I wouldn't know, or at least I can't remember, nor can I check because things happened and the VOD's down. But it was a setup Terapagos it was a combined Terapagos versus a combined CSR mirror. And I think it went to 3 games, and I believe 2 of the 3 games, they didn't go immediately to timer, but it went to like 2 minutes left in the game, both of them. And like you're in turn 12, and there's been a whopping 7 damage done between both teams. And I'm like, oh god. I'm like, I just woke up and I already want to go back to bed. They're fun chess matches to watch, but watching it about 20-30 minutes after waking up, you're like, oh god, my brain is not fully functioning to watch another 5 or 6 pardon shots into an Amoonguss, into Spore, Fake Out, whatever.
Yeah,
it's something.
I was gonna say this is an EU regional. Like, what do we expect? This is the balance meta. This is where we got Sneasler balance from last, format. It's just where we've consistently gotten really great balance teams, and the EU meta typically takes really, really well to it, which is what we're seeing here. There's a much larger gap between the Pokemon at the top and the Pokemon at the bottom in day 2. The best EU players tend to revolve around a really great Balancey core, and there's really no Balancey core I think in the history of Pokemon than Urshifu, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, Incineroar. It's hard to beat it.
It is the ultimate fire, water, grass, redirection, double fake out, double pivot. Depending if you're running Scarf Urshifu, you can have triple pivot with U-turn.
And then you add Terra onto it, and it's like, yeah, now I have even more defensive options that I can use. It's very, very much absurd that we got these Pokemon just back. It's like it's like a culture shock coming from Reg H for sure.
Yeah, because the weird thing was like with Reg H as well, where like everything felt like there wasn't a lot of damage, but that meant everyone had to invest so much more into damage, and like the bulk and everything just wasn't there. Like that was the weird thing with Farigiraf. Farigiraf feels more bulky in Regulation G, and honestly in Reg F as well, than it did in Reg H. It's just even though the attacks weren't these super nuclear surging strikes or Beads of Ruin boosted heat waves and like booster energy, like whatever, drain punches and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it's like it felt like everything else just did more damage because it's like, okay, well, I have to go 252 adamant to do any damage to begin with, and so everything just got it was just weird.
Yeah, also its role compression is really great for
Yeah,
this format, the priority blocking, and then you also take into account, when you put a restricted Pokemon beside it, like a Miraidon or a Calyrex Ice, all of a sudden your focus turns away from, oh, this Farigiraf has the opportunity to set Trick Room for their Ursaluna, who's going to get its guts set up. So I'm going to double into this to now, okay, do I want to hedge my bets against this Farigiraf maybe setting up a Trick Room for a late game Ursaluna Blood Moon, or do I want to deal with this Miraidon who's about to choice Specs Electro Drift my entire team's, to oblivion? So
yeah,
it becomes.
yeah. You're like looking at your notebook. It's like, okay, do I have anything that can switch into Helping Hands, Terra Fairy, Hadron Engine boosted, uh, D-Gleam? No. Okay, that's a problem then.
Yeah, do I also immediately lose if they get a Trick Room up and Volt Switch into Ursaluna Blood Moon, or whatever Pokemon
Yeah,
set up for that moment? Also no, like it's a very tough game, and Farigiraf adds a ton on top of taking away that tool from Rillaboom and Incineroar and Iron Hands in their
yeah.
priority fake
You can't
outs.
click the fake. Yeah, like not having the fake out or the sucker punch or the grassy glide. Like even the like we saw a lot of times this weekend where Aqua Jet was we like the Aqua Jet we set up the KO for the even the Scarf Urshifu to click Aqua Jet, and it's like
And,
now you can't click that move,
and
and that's
Thunderclap.
yep, the number of times, like, I think there was a few times on stream even where we saw the Thunderclap play was set up, and then the Furry just switches in from the back because they were able to hide that Mon, and the Thunderclap doesn't go off, and now your Raging Bolt would be in a very bad position. Whether it was getting threatened down by a fairy type attack like a Moonblast or a Draco Meteor from an opposing Miraidon, like it's something that it makes you always have to have those mind games. If you see the Farigiraf on your opponent's side of the field, even if you or on the team sheet, even if you haven't seen it come into play yet, the fact that it can always be there and it can just switch in and completely end your stop that Pokemon from hitting the priority move, you could waste a turn, and you can't waste any turns in this format.
Yeah, and it just the last thing I wanted to mention about Farigiraf's priority blocking is that, particularly into Groudon matchups, like the Raging Bolt is Life Orb with Terra Electric Thunderclap. It's one of the primary sets. We also are seeing a lot of Assault Vest from it, but being able to take away that option, which is really what makes Raging Bolt so extremely powerful in this format, is that priority Thunderclap with its booster energy or Life Orb boost, proto boost. It's really really dangerous, and even resists don't take it well. So having
Yeah,
Farigiraf to be able to pivot in, it takes away these Pokemon's just best options. So happy to see the Giraffe back up in the game. I know I tried it in Reg H and felt very underwhelmed. So
I also tried it in Reg H. However, I'm pretty sure that in every format I've played super seriously, because I didn't really play Regs A or B as much, but Reg C through through now, I think every time I've built at least one serious team with Farig, and most outside of Reg H, most of them have done well. Reg H being the one that doesn't like Farigiraf. But this format loves it because Farigiraf is champion. First off, congratulations to William Basilino. If I had a nickel for every single Reg G event I watched where a Miraidon player from Italy won, I'd have 2 nickels, which is honestly for that specific situation kind of a lot.
you would probably have a few more. I feel like this is not the first, the set only
Official
this
official events, not like the bigger grassroots.
is I is this the only time that an Italian with Miraidon has won? Like
No, the only other time it was this in Worlds.
It doesn't feel like it. I feel like there's
I
every other
know it
week we're
doesn't feel
talking
like
about an Italian with Miraidon. Like I don't know.
I know it doesn't feel like it, but like I think it has only happened twice. And this is pretty much an updated version of the Worlds team.
Hmm.
I believe that the only differences really are like the Terra
It's
Poison. I think it literally is just the Terra types and maybe a move set or two change. I can't remember if Suri ran low kick,
I
or if he.
believe they did. I think
Okay,
low kick
yeah,
was started in the regulation G, OG format because it has just such a broad uh power base power against so many of the restricted, since a ton of them are incredibly heavy.
and not even
Um
just the restricted. You also like instance of relatively heavy Pokemon that you can hit super effective with this.
yeah, King
Raging
Gambit.
Bolt as well. Yep, King Gambit, and of course, like you're knocking Zama pretty hard. Pretty much low kick on this team or in this format against a lot of these heavier restricted Pokemon. It's like having a close combat that doesn't drop your defenses. So you're actually able to stay bulky. And then you throw in the Quark Drive boost as well. You get that attack bonus. Like the Iron Hands low kick is taking out a bulk of the format. And that's kind of crazy. I don't, but
Was Luca's Iron Hands Terra Bug?
that's I think the difference. I'm googling it right now.
Because I definitely
For
remember that
VGC.
being very popular towards the end of the format, because Lando I was just
Yeah,
everywhere.
so the differences between the teams is that William has there you go. So William went with a Stellar Terra Urshifu instead of a Water Terra, Poison Terra Hands instead of Bug, and Luca also like we did see a lot. So Luca ran low kick over heavy slam, while William is running low kick over the electric coverage in wild charge. So like that is another difference. It looks like everything else, yeah, everything else is the same set wise, same exact Terra Fairy Miraidon. Let me check. Actually, the giraffe might be different. Um, nope, the giraffe, the
Yeah,
Terra, that's this. That was Terra Water both times. The Wims is the same. The Yep, it
I
was wood. It was the wood hammer as well on the ogre pond. So yeah, the changes are pretty much heavy.
stats
Yeah,
and
stats, two stellar terra, two terras, and one move.
yeah, which like in terms of the Urshifu, the Stellar Terra makes a ton of sense. I mean, you get the benefit of getting your close combats out of it as well. So, that change definitely makes sense. The Terra Poison on the Iron Hands, in terms of the format right now, ground coverage outside of Groudon is not incredibly popular. We do see Lando Eye, but it's not, up in the top 12 usage as it was in Regulation G prior. I do believe after Miraidon takes down the tournament, Lando Eye usage is gonna definitely
Pop
probably
up.
go up quite a bit. So we can expect to maybe go back towards that Terra Bug on the Iron Hands, but it definitely helps a lot into particularly I guess fighting types, other Iron Hands.
I think just the mirror in general, where you can go you could probably go like I'll try to pull up the calc right
And
now,
fairy
but
types as well. It's
yeah, you could
obviously
probably
good
go
into
yeah, like
Flutter.
Terra Poison Terra Poison in front of the opposing like Terra Fairy Miraidon, and then
Yep.
that Heavy Slam's probably doing a decent bit of damage. I mean, we can
It's probably KOing. Iron Hands is a big boy.
yeah, like I'm just like looking uh like assuming that like so we know that Suri ran 180 Brave. Throw that in a terrain, and I'll just pull up
Yeah,
Miraidon, Terra it, and then throw Heavy Slam. So actually, surprisingly enough, it's because it's
it's
probably
a
because
two
of the
shot.
weight. No, it's a 3-shot. It's
Wow.
actually a lot less than, and that's with a 180 plus Quark Drive hands.
That is boosted?
So that with the boost. So yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised. But the Terra
But
Poison means that the
you're probably like 10-shotting from
oh
with the Terra Fairy Dazzling Glaive.
the
It's
Terra
doing
Fairy.
nothing.
Again, assuming it's the 76 HP 236 special defense, the Terra Fairy D-Gleam is doing it's 16 to 19%. It is a possible 6-hit KO.
Oh wow. So
So
you at least still win that.
yeah, so
But
you're definitely winning that trade. I think that's probably what this is for. One of the bigger changes Miraidon teams have been trying to make in the grand scheme of things is just how to win the mirror. And going with the Terra Poison on hand really does help with the mirror if you can get your opponent to commit to that Terra Fairy
yeah.
on the Miraidon. Now you also do have to make sure that, of course, the Psychic from Fergraph is going to be an absolute pain, along with Ogerpon's always a pain for this. But yeah, that's probably what this is for, what the Terra Poison's for.
Yeah, and speaking on the Ogerpon, that was the other really interesting and big change that we saw from this team. We're very used to seeing these Hearth Flames on the most occasions run a 252, Jolly, and just be max speed, max attack, and try to hit like a truck. This was certainly not the case on this Ogerpon. It was very, very slow. I believe same with the Urshifu, was not max speed either. It was probably adamant.
Yeah,
But Ogerpon was actually slower than Oliver Escalin's Rillaboom, which
which we
is
can.
a max speed of 156, I believe.
I'm
Um,
checking that right now.
or it's either 156 or 161. Either way,
It's actually 150.
it's 150. So that, and I believe Adamant Ogerpon is 152. So with max speed, so this was obviously not a max speed. It was bulk invested, adamant Ogerpon more than likely.
Yeah, no, like looking at it right now, it would be like the max speed it could possibly be. Assuming it was the 252 Jolly Rillaboom, the
Mhm.
max speed it possibly could have been would have been an adamant 148 speed. That puts that 149.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
it was slower than Kyogre 2, which is 156. So Rillaboom obviously slower than that.
yeah, and that
Um,
was actually with you bringing up the Kyogre. That was one, and of course we have Oliver's team up here. One of the weird things we did notice, or no, I wouldn't say weird, but one of the different things we noticed with these bulky Kyogres is that they really put a lot into speed. I assume that most of the stats were put into bulk and speed, and you just assume that the special attack would just come from the natural boost you're getting from the rain, and the calm mines as well,
yeah,
because like a lot of these lefties Kyogres, like they were moving a lot faster than you would expect a Kyogre to move. That when you saw like that it was a calm mine set. This is a Kyogre team that we saw a lot this weekend. Like Jay and I were going through it beforehand. I believe we saw in like the top 20 four of this exact six, which you can actually see in fifth place down here and ninth place down here.
yeah.
And
There was like 7 different Kyogre teams though, like
yeah,
like
and then you
7 Kyogres within the top 20 or something.
yeah, and then you also have Marcus Statter who ran
The Jugulus
Jugulus
version.
instead of Roaring Moon. And then you also had Adrian Isidoro in 18th. So yeah, it was like
What,
yeah,
six,
five in the
six,
five or
five?
six in the top 20. Yeah, five in the top 20, which like that's top cut. It was 19 players top cut. So yeah, over 25% of top cut was a combine Kyogre team with the Rilla, Incinemungus, Waterfoo plus Paradox Dark type that knows Tailwind. And I think one of the things is, why is this team good? The amount of damage Kyogre can put out with, and the amount of bulk it can put out with Calm Mind is really, really unbelievable. One of the big things to look at when you look at a lot of the restricted Pokemon is the fact that, like, a lot of these Pokemon, they are special attackers, and the physical mons really don't do much into the into Kyogre. I think like the one that really kind of bothers you would be Zamazenta, and that's why you have the rain boosted Surging Strikes from Waterfoo, and the Amoonguss, and the Terra Ghost, Will-O-Wisp, Incineroar. These three Pokemon here give Zamazenta an absolute fit, and once you get the Zamazenta out, your Kyogre just comes in and completely cleans it.
Yeah.
So it's a great meta call. It's a great balancing meta call for the balance region of VGC. And there is, again, as Jay, you already said, Jay, a lot of fun little changes to it. This Rillaboom, we have not seen a drum beating Rillaboom. We haven't seen a jolly 252 Rillaboom. This is something that can throw off a lot of people's internal calcs and internal clocks. Because all of a sudden, the Rillaboom is going faster than the Ogerpon or their Urshifu, that they're just so used to Rillaboom just staying in that 110 to 120 to 125-ish speed range. And this is, I mean, Oliver's like, nope, not only am I going to use it to throw you off, but drum beating isn't guaranteed -1, so I'm also going to use this Rillaboom as my speed control. Which
Yeah,
is...
the last time I've seen a drum beating Rillaboom was probably when I used it on Sword and Shield series like 3.
Yeah,
Before the Isle of Armor, like
yes,
2020.
2020. But yeah, before Rillaboom got its moves and ability, yeah.
It didn't have Grassy Glide. My Rillaboom was awesome, and I loved my drum beating Rillaboom. It was great for me when I used it back then. People didn't expect it, and they certainly don't expect it now, and it still has the added benefit of Grassy Glide and Grassy Surge on top of it.
Yeah,
It,
going through the other, just quickly going through the other teams here, it looked like there was one other, I think it was ninth place. So ninth place Calvin Forrester also used the drum beating Rillaboom.
Yeah, it's a cool little tech and just like idea to this team. I mean, Kyogre's main thing is that its speed tier is a little awkward, and when you're using this Calm Mind Kyogre, you really want to be getting that one Calm Mind off and then be going faster than your opponents to be getting that damage. That way you're taking less on the opposing end. You can use that Rillaboom as secondary speed control in the matchups that your Roaring Moon is not as strong, to try and get your Kyogre going in the proper way. I think it's really genius. I love this idea. It's guaranteed. Rillaboom's incredibly bulky. By putting so much speed into it, you get another surprise speed interaction with your opponent, which probably, in a lot of occasions when people were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, maybe be speed tying this Rillaboom, and instead your Rillaboom is then outspeeding upwards to like adamant Urshifu, like you're like, oh, okay, this is a thing now that I have to deal with, and my speed is gonna be lessened. And it was extremely impactful in finals if Kyogre could hit a move.
Yeah, well, even then, like, I'm using finals as an example, like, just matchup wise, if you're like, let's just say with Oliver playing against a Miraidon team, if the Miraidon is in the back, you have to worry about, okay, if I switch in, am I switching into a drum beating? Because if I do, now all of a sudden the Kyogre's faster than me, and I might need to take a +1 Ice Beam, or if I'm Terra'd, a +1 Rain boosted Origin Pulse, if like I'm already in the Terra Fairy, and it's like you can't guarantee that, oh, I'm going to be faster, because the drum beating on the switch in completely can throw your plans off to the side. Now, one of the
Yeah.
Pokemon that we really didn't see when we did see this team on stream was the Roaring Moon. And really the purpose for the Roaring Moon, it's it is a great tailwind setter to match pace of the pace of play with speed. And it's also just generally really good into the Calyrex Shadow teams, being able to be super fast and threaten the super fast knockoff. The Terraflying Acrobatics does a ton of damage. Overall, Roaring Moon it's one of my favorite Pokemon. It's a Pokemon I've had a ton of success with a lot of these different sets, and the Terraflying, its offense is really great to have in this format. Going back to just the top Pokemon that we've seen, you have a lot of Terra Grass, not only just the Terra Grass you see, but just the top 12 non-restricted. You have two Urshifus, you have Amoonguss, Rilla, Firepawn. In day one, you had Whimsicott. None of these Pokemon want to take a Terraflying Acrobatics from
Yeah,
the
not even
massive attack.
neutral Pokemon want to take it either.
So it's just a really, really great call, not only for the supportive side, helping the Kyogre out against Calyrex Shadow and Calyrex Ice to an extent. If the CIR doesn't Terra, it's not going to like eating that knockoff. But the non-restricted Pokemon that support these Mons really don't like flying damage. I think another change we might see is an increase in Tornadus in the next tournament, because like having stab flying damage right now is so useful.
Yeah, when I was looking at Kyogre on this team and thinking about how Terra Grass interacts in this format, when you think about, when you pair it especially next to Amoonguss, you're thinking a lot about, flying type damage into Kyogre. And there really is not a ton of flying type damage in the format right now. It really is primarily this Roaring Moon set that we see, running around on these Kyogre teams. Also, just to go back to the Rillaboom for a second, when I was watching finals, I had gotten into it about like the end of the second game is when I started watching because I had to run out to Target. And I was watching after turn one, and I was like, oh, the only way that William can lose this game at this point was if Rillaboom had drum beating. And I was like, and there's no way that Rillaboom has drum beating. Nobody runs it anymore. And then all of a sudden, I see Rillaboom not only move before Ogerpon, but also click drum beating into the Ogerpon. I was like, what is happening? It was really like an awesome, just like jaw drop moment, and it was so unfortunate to watch Origin Pulse miss after the fact.
Yeah.
But this is kind of just one of the things when we talk about Kyogre and Groudon that is an inherent flaw in their comparisons to their Gen 8 counterparts who are also spread type damage beasts, is that they always hit their horses. The Kyogre and Groudon unfortunately do not.
Yeah, and that really is a major thing. If Origin Pulse and P-Blades, if they were 100% accurate, they would be just right up there, and like a team like this would be even more dominant than it is. But the fact that Origin Pulse can miss is not great.
It's crazy because if you think about it, like if we didn't have Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon, we might have 100% accurate Precipice Blades and Origin Pulse nowadays. But
we might.
We got them from them. I understand that, but like also because of their just strength levels and how overpowering they would be if they were 100% accurate, they forever got screwed, unfortunately.
And who knows, we might be getting Origin forms back in Generation 10, because I'm going to ride this Mega's returning Gen 10. I'm going to ride that until I'm told no.
What do you think like Origin Geomancy is going to do?
It's going to allow you to get up and turn your opponent's switch off, and then circle win on the match slip.
It's gonna
That's
be
what
like
it's going to do.
It's gonna be like on when you switch Xerneas onto the field, you immediately get like a 4 times boost into each of your stats or something.
Yeah, it's going to be disgusting. I'm honestly, I mean, actually, Xerneas probably would balance this format out a little, and it would be disgusting. and I would hate it. I miss
I think
Yveltal.
Xerneas would be absolutely awful for this format. I think it would be the worst thing ever.
Oh no, it would not be. I'm not saying it would be healthy. It's not healthy at all. Yveltal will be very healthy, and I wish we got like I want my bird that I can cook on a cast iron skillet and
I
crack
think
some eggs with it.
Yveltal is fantastically fair. I think
Yeah,
that Pokemon is incredibly well made.
it is. Xerneas, no, bad. Go away. Which is honestly why. What's also probably kind of fair and also adorable because he's just a little guy. Why is 1 minute? Any minute. Pokedata doesn't want to work, and I hope it's just the website. And there we go.
Okay, I'm
There we
back.
go. Third place. Alex Gomez with the with the setup Terapagos team that has been popping up a lot. Started at really this sort of six started up popping up at Worlds, or at least the idea of a more optimized setup Terapagos started at Worlds, and we started seeing even more of it as the grassroots events have gone on. We talked a lot about this team already. A lot of your key balance pieces are here with Incinemungus, Urshifu, and then just for more typing, you're adding Raging Bolt and Fluttermane. The Terra Fairy Raging Bolt really helps against Miraidon, while the Urshifu and like the rest of the balance pieces, they just make sure that Terapagos can get set up. Substitute is an option in order to just on these call them dead turns, you can get a sub up to try to get your momentum going again. But the really cool thing about this team, I think, is the no protect on the booster Flutter.
Yeah, the Thunder Wave is interesting. It's I believe a Fluttermane that we have had many discussions on in the past, and we each have some particular feelings on it. I will say that when I watched Alex's top 8 match, I believe it was, the Thunder Wave was very pivotal in playing around a Sucker Punch from both Chien Pao and Urshifu, which both went into Terapagos anyway, as Alex set up a sub and was able to take momentum, as you said, which is something a really big benefit of the substitute on this team, is that this Terapagos, while it goes Terra Starstorm, Terra Stellar Starstorm, it can be very threatening on that front. It also has the ability to, say, I'm going to sit behind a substitute and calm mind up and be very dangerous that way. Speed control is great on the Fluttermane, so, there's a lot of speed control there. Do we
And that's
need
the thing, like
both
this
with
team really
Electro
doesn't
Web on
have it.
Raging Bolt?
Yep. Yeah, those are the two big things where it's like that non-conventional speed control between the Icy Wind. Like there's no Tailwind setter or Trick Room mode on this team, and you kind of don't need it. You're just playing mid speed the entire time. You can play in Trick Room. Like the Terapagos even in general is kind of slow to begin with, so you can go with this like into against a Trick Room team. Of course, you have the very fast non-prankster taunt from Fluttermane, but hypothetically, if the Trick Room goes up, you're opposing like your Incinemungus and even your Terapagos can go and put together a Trick Room mode to just get through those 5 turns, and then you should be set up to put the pressure on outside of Trick Room. One of the other things with the substitute as well that's really, really useful is that substitute will protect the Terapagos from Spore. Like one of the big issues, or at least big like Pokemon to use against a Terapagos is Amoonguss, and that's also one of the reasons why on other variants of this team we've actually seen Fluttermane be Terra Grass to just add another spore immunity to the team, outside of the Amoonguss and the safety goggles on Incin. But to be able to set up a substitute in front of a spore, now you're protected. The spore can't do anything. Once you really get that substitute set up, Amoonguss doesn't do anything into your restricted Pokemon, which is really great. And you can safely click the Calm Mind to set up, and now when the Amoonguss comes back, you're at +2 Stellar Terra Starstorm, or just your non-Terra Starstorm will do a lot of damage into it.
Yeah, and by having this Terra Fairy instead of the Terra Grass on Fluttermane, you get that additional damage boost, which maybe could be a little bit lacking elsewhere on the team. We did see that the Terapagos did not have a ton of special attack investment. It definitely is relying a little bit more on the Calm Mind. So your primary source of damage is going to be coming a lot from the Urshifu and the Raging Bolt. So having the ability to go Terra Fairy and start clicking Moonblasts is also a really nice benefit.
Yeah, I think one of the other things I did hear, I believe that this Terapagos, or at least a lot of the Terapagos on these teams, are bold. In order to, I believe there's probably like close combat calcs that
yes,
you need
we
to be
did
bold
see
for.
one live a close combat actually on stream. I believe it was Alex's in game 3 of round 8, maybe.
I
Of
believe
top 8.
so. Yeah. So yeah, it's the team really puts a lot of effort on the bulk, probably to an same situation where the Kyogres are putting a lot in speed. You are really counting on the Calm Minds, and on the other side, going into top 4, Alex never really was able to get those Calm Minds up, and between not having those boosts and William being able to have the light screen set up by his Whimsicott, it felt like the Terapagos was doing nothing, and when you have a situation where your restricted does relatively nothing, you're kind of in a bad spot to begin with. So that is like the weakness of this team. If you don't get those Calm Mind boosts up, it's probably not going to go your way. But with the redirection, the pivots, the speed control, and the fake out, you do have a lot of ways to get that all set up. Moving on to our next team, Fetty Compo bringing the Zamazenta, and this is a version of the Zamazenta that we've been kind of seeing a lot of recently. Well, the Zamazenta of Reg Part 1 was playing Pokemon like Galarian Moltres and Latios. The Reg G Part 2 Zamazenta teams have decided to do this weird, really radical thing called using good Pokemon. and it's worked. The teams are just they have a lot more dimensions, they have a lot more modes. The Gem Pow is a staple with the Zama to be able to really do a ton of damage with the body press. It also lets you run Wide Guard instead of Iron Defense, so you can still put out a lot of damage. And then you do just have this Booster Flutter plus Chiyu mode, again a Booster Flutter without Protect. Utilizing the ghost typing to make sure, because your natural ghost typing, so that the fake out just goes right through you. And yeah, you can just be like, okay, well, I'm going to be the fast thing on the field with the Scarf and the booster speed, and I'm going to click Moonblast and Heat Wave, or Overheat and Icy Wind, and what are you going to do about it?
Notably,
you're going
this Fluttermane has Shadow Ball over Thunderwave.
It does, yes, it does have the shadow. I think specifically with the Chiyu, it is correct to go with Shadow Ball over Thunderwave, as well as the fact that you also have some relatively speedy Pokemon in general. You don't really need that extra speed control. Like Chien, Zama, Flutter, and Chiyu are all super fast, especially when your booster speed and Scarf. Raging Bolt has Thunderclap, so while it doesn't have the natural speed, you're always threatening with priority. And Amoonguss doesn't want to or doesn't need to be fast on this team. So it kind of makes sense where you don't need that extra statusy base speed control. You just need the Icy Wind. So yeah, this is I really like this iteration of Zamazenta. I think that it's just showing again how people are just iterating the ideas around these restricteds compared to where they were at in the initial stage of this format.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely ideas that we've seen on, Zamazenta teams before, just in a bunch of different, ways on a bunch of different teams. Like we've seen the Chi with Zama in the previous Reg G format, Chi and Pao, the Fluttermane. We're normally used to seeing like a Rillaboom somewhere on this team as well. Like a Choice Band Rillaboom is a pretty consistent slot. So we're starting to see a lot more of like a Moongus, Raging Bolt, and Fluttermane over there instead. So
Yeah. And while the Rillaboom could be really good, it definitely helps with the recovery on the Zama. The Raging Bolt as well, and the Chien-Pao, you're able to offensively threaten the Miraidon instead of what the Rillaboom was doing in the past, which was just trying to play the terrain game.
yeah,
But yeah, very, very good team, very, very good player. And it's something that maybe does. I could see like this sort of very offensive team with that little defensive backbone of Bolt, Umungus, and honestly Zama is a defensive backbone in itself, with especially with Terra Dragon. I could see this maybe popping up in America and doing well next week.
for
Another
sure.
team that will probably be doing well in America is Junsi Zoo. This is an iteration on Navi Joshi's uh, Calyrex Ice land. Like pretty much, it was the ice, ground, electric offense. With Calyrex Ice, Lando I, Joshi used an Regieleki, while Junzi went with an Iron Hands as the electric type. Being super bulky, a Pokemon that is really great to bring into the Miraidon matchup with Terra Fire, while also giving the team fake out support. One of the other interesting aspects of this team is the fact that it is a screens Grimmsnarl. We really haven't seen screens pop up too much. There was a point right before Worlds where there were like these screens Miraidon teams that all of them flopped at Worlds. But seeing screens, and I think there was also a screens Kyogre team that was also flopped at Worlds. So seeing screens on this more offensive Calyrex team do very well at this tournament, I think that's an interesting thing to note.
Yeah, this team is definitely similar to like you said, the ice ground electric core that we've seen previously, but this one definitely is leaning much more towards the Trick Room mode. We do actually have an example of the Regieleki version in this tournament. It did not make the top 8, but it is actually 19th place. Wei Dang used a version, and we can compare and see that it actually has just a ton more fast options on it between like the Urshifu single strike, the Choice Scarf Landorus, even the Indeedee is not terribly low speed. There's probably a bunch of speed investment on the Calyrex Ice. Meanwhile, this team from Zhangzi Zoo is obviously leaning much more towards the bulky Trick Room oriented mode, using that Grimmsnarl to set up screens, and then putting Ice Rider and Iron Hands on the field with a Moongus to sit there and absorb hits and just be a nuisance to the other team. You then use Landorus and Urshifu as a fast mode, as a pin, as a late game option, or an early game option to try and get that damage off, to try and close out, and outside of Trick Room as well. So I like
I
this
think
team.
I do. I actually really do too. And I'm comparing it with like other Ice Rider teams we've seen, like 11th place. That's the classic Amoongus, Farig, Rilla. We're going to be in Trick Room. I'm going to try to balance play you. And like, I think the big change that Calyrex Ice Rider really needs at this point is to step away from being this Trick Room oriented balance bot and more so leaning into the offensive capabilities that it can provide. There's a lot of like between both its fighting types, Calyrex and Landorus, there is so much damage that this team can immediately put out, which is why you can afford to have a Grimmsnarl that doesn't really do much else once it sets its reflecting light screen up. Just kind of sits there. Maybe it's able to click Foul Play or Thunder Wave, but outside of that, it's like a dead spot. But you can have a dead spot because the Pokemon next to it is doing so much damage.
Hey, foul
And
play and
especially
Grimmsnarl's massive in the mirror, though.
it is massive in the mirror. It's also really great as just another way to check Calyrex Shadow Rider
Yep.
to be able to threaten the Thunder Wave. If they don't Terra, threaten the Foul Play. And of course, that's also why we have the Terra Normal on the Calyrex to be able to get further in that mirror to be able to keep your Calyrex safer than the opposing I'm sorry, not the mirror, the Calyrex Shadow matchup. Too many Calyrexes.
Yeah,
We didn't see any Calyrex Shadow though.
no, none in the top 8 at least.
No.
Or top
Moving on,
16 even, I think,
yeah.
actually.
Moving on to our last two teams in the top 8, we have two different looks at Groudon. The first is by Flavio Del Pito, playing a team straight out of Joe UX9's Wet Dream, with Groudon, Jumpluff, Single Strike, Fire Pawn, Instant, and Raging Bolt.
Yeah, this is probably like some Joe UX9 team. I know Joe's been playing Groudon lately, so I wouldn't be surprised if this was the exact team that he's been playing.
Yeah. I do want things to note that I do like with the team. I really like specifically on the Groudon, the Heat Crash, taking same exact idea as like running Heavy Slam in these formats. With these big Pokemon, Heat Crash can do a ton of damage more consistently than Fire Punch. When Groudon's using it, especially when it's Terra Fire and Sun boosted, and then going with Stomping Tantrum as a single target move instead of the Precipice Blades. So you have a ground type move that you can click when you really, really, really need to take a specific Pokemon out, and you don't want to leave that up to chance. While the Stomping Tantrum does less damage than even the Spread P-Blades does, it's still a powerful move, and if you're going into you hit into a Protect or something the turn before, Stomping's actually a better move to click than the Precipice Blades.
Yeah, so I think the one thing on the Groudon Heat Crash Fire type move debate that was very compelling to me is the damage it does into Calyrex Ice Rider. Fire Punch, I believe, is a 2 to 3 hit KO on Ice Rider. Meanwhile, Heat Crash does very little damage because Ice Rider is very heavy itself.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
is
the
the
one
thing.
thing.
That is the one thing, but at least P-Blades is neutral. Honestly, this and in the grand scheme of things, looking at this team, your Ice Rider
matchup is fine.
it's fine. Yeah, you can work it out. It's not terrible.
I would think so, considering you have Dark Fu and Ogrepot Hearthflame and Incineroar and Jumpluff who can encore and stuff.
Because initially I'd be like, okay, well, the annoying Terra type for this would be the Terra Fire because it takes out your Ogrepon. But if they go Terra Fire, well, congratulations, you can click P-Blades now.
Yeah,
you get to click your funny button again. So that's kind of where I look to see the changes.
I like the Groudon teams in particular because they both are. I feel like they're the true blue Regulation G format idea. They are specifically built around what Groudon brings, particularly its sun, its proto sun most of the time. It has chlorophyll, it has photosynthesis users. It is that team that is built around the centerpiece. Meanwhile, a lot of what we've seen so far has been here's your restricted and here's your balancing pieces. These are very unique pieces here.
Yeah, it's here's your Combine bot and the Pokemon that let you click Combine.
Yeah,
This is the 8th place team. Probably the last thing we're going to talk about because we've gone a good bit so far.
Yeah.
And this is a Gouging Fire variant. Gouging Fire is back from Regulation F, letting you click Howl to help boost the Assault Vest Groudon. Howl will also let you get rid of the Intimidate drops as well that can go into it. The Howl, and again, the Sun Boost will also let the Flare Blitz from Gouging Fire do a ton of damage. Howl also not only is great next to the Groudon, but we all know from Regulation F, clicking Howl to boost your Banded Darkfu and your Stellar Terra Qianpao those two Pokemon just break balance scores or just break really anything. And the idea of a team like this is to pretty much honestly utilize more so the Gouging Fire than the Groudon. But of course, the Groudon could go do this through the Gouging Fire to get into a position where whatever your opponent sends in, it doesn't matter if it resists. The only way it's going to live is if it's immune. Like, there's not a lot that lives a Terra Dark Choice Banded Wicked Blow to begin with. Now you're putting it at +1, +2, and like even your like resist, like, even your fairy types are like your Terra Fairy Raging Bolt. That
and then
shit
you could
losing
switch and
this.
Sword of Ruin, Chi and Pow on top of that
Yeah,
too.
like this is a absolute. This team is just filled with absolute like core breakers that a single Pokemon that just take out like one or two of your key switch-ins and just make your entire plan fall apart.
Yeah, so the Gouging Fire is definitely like a cool Pokemon to me, and I really enjoy the thought of it and what it does on this team. It is a little awkward in this format though, because in order to actually run it, you probably need the Clear Amulet on it, because Incineroar just completely, takes care of Gouging Fire otherwise. Groudon at least can hit super effectively into it, and with Howl Boosts can gain it back and really take that traction. But Gouging Fire, taking the Clear Amulet also means that Groudon no longer gets to run Protect. And in terms of Pokemon that you're going to run next to the Gouging Fire to try to get that Howl boosts that can get Protect, it's only Chi and Pow. So your Burning Bulwark kind of becomes a little bit of like a non-factor, because you don't want to fake out into the Gouging Fire anyway, so you might as well just fake out into the Groudon next to it, who's going to take the Howl boost and deal with that.
Yeah. One of the last things to note on this team is the support Volcarona. It's something that we've seen in the past, where Volcarona has this amazing toolkit support-wise. On this team, it's acting as the speed control with Tailwind, your redirector, along with being able to put out a lot of status with both its own Will-O-Wisp and, of course, the Flame Body. Now, normally on this team, we're used to seeing Overheat as the fourth move. They went with Heat Wave, is a spread option. I'm not like, I mean, both Heat Wave and Overheat can miss, and we also don't know how much offensive damage output is on this Volcarona, where maybe they're getting a lot out of the Heat Wave. What's nice with the Overheat is you don't need to put a lot of investment into it. The damage itself comes from the base power of the move. But yeah, it's just another really, really cool Pokemon that I think we might see more of as the format changes, even as just a new like role compressing balance piece on the evolving versions of maybe say like the Tropicos teams.
Yeah, and I feel like you run the Heat Wave here because in the sun you're basically just getting spread overheat at that
Oh
point.
yeah, you're right. You're in the sun. Yep, that makes more sense.
You get that boost anyway. It's 5% more accurate, and you get to just do spread damage on it. So it's like it's probably a little bit weaker than Overheat's base power, but the damage is still really solid for what you're getting out of it. Especially from a support Volcarona, I'll take doing spread heat waves with a chance to burn in the sun any day.
Yeah. But yeah, that is pretty much the tournament. Talking about just the top 8. Not a lot of interesting stuff, or at least super unique stuff, happened after. Like one of just do like a little overview. We did see in 10th place the Miraidon team with Iron Leaves, and Iron Leaves actually did things on stream. I believe it was in it was in either round 11 or top cut match. Tune in to watch that if you want to see Iron Leaves actually do something for once and be
For
productive.
once.
I think one of the other things like
Regieleki,
and then the
which we
more this is
touched upon a little bit.
Yeah, this is the 6 that the initial 6 that we saw with the Scarf Urshifu, the Scarf Lando Eye, the Regieleki, And there are some other like
Imprison
interesting
Trick
things.
Room, Calyrex Ice. So this thing's probably max speed too.
Yeah, Imprison Trick Room's Cali Ice with Terra Dragon, the alluring voice on Indeedee. Another thing to note with this team as well is there's only one Protect, so this is really leaning heavy into the offense. And due to the fact that there's only one Protect, that's probably why you have the Indeedee as a way to play the terrain game and keep all of your Pokemon safe. Of course, you can't keep the Landorus safe unless it Terras because it's floating over the terrain. But outside of that, you're able to you're using the Indeedee as a way to stop the fake outs that are so prevalent in this format.
And alluring
And
voice is if they have a stat boost, they get confused, right?
I believe so, yes.
I think so.
So that is really it. And like, yeah, if you go down a little deeper, you see a new version, 27th, a new version or newer version of the Dozo Giri Calyrex team.
Isn't that kind of just the same one we've been seeing? Looks like it.
Kind of. Like, we've been seeing like these last two spots have been swapping between like Rory Moon Hands, Water Pond, Rock Pond.
Oh yeah, Rocky Helmet Iron Hands is definitely not something that's been there before.
Yeah. And especially with electric terrain as well. Like this is a weird Pokemon. And then I think one of the other interesting teams to note on before we leave, actually there's two. Eric Rios going with still keeping the Rillaboom, dropping the Chien-Pao on Zamazenta, and using Ditto. He used the Ditto in an expert fashion on his Stream Max, showing not only as a way to copy your opponent's restricted, but with this safety goggles variant, copying your opponent's Incineroar, copying their Amoonguss, and getting your own like quick fake outs off or quick spores off before swapping out and then trying to catch the restricted on swap that way.
Yeah,
So
or even bringing it on like a Urshifu, get like a safety goggles Urshifu. Yeah, Ditto's extremely powerful in this format. There's just so much strong Pokemon, and I like the goggles option. It really makes you be able to play very freely in front of Amoonguss, which we saw was close to 50% in the field in day 2.
And the final team we'll just quickly go over because Carter, who's currently working, did mention this. Eternatus, Cosmic Power, Lefties Eternatus.
With the Dozo.
Oh, God.
I love this. Fissure Dozo, yes.
Oh, God.
No, this is awesome.
I know.
You got U-turn, Choice Scarf, it's Lando Eye.
2/3 of the hosts here are fighting the war against Big Stall on the side of Big Stall.
Yes, sir. Yes, we are. You're telling me that the best thing in the world does not sound like setting up 6 Cosmic Powers while you constantly flip back and forth by clicking U-turn and Parting Shot with instant Rillaboom and Landorus? Like, and then in game 2, you're just like, oh, how about I bring Dozo instead and click Fissure a whole bunch and yawn and put you to sleep and sit here and yeah, awesome. Eternatus, great. You could go even further with the Eternatus and just get rid of Sludge Bomb and make it toxic. Like, just go off the deep end. Like, seriously, would you finish in day 2? Probably not. So good on this guy. Good on Ricardo Apareda. Good job.
For finishing in 29th, like X3. Like
welcome to the gang, brother.
Actually, I just want to see this with Ricardo. So Ricardo was knocked out of cut after round 9, but I was like looking, I'm like, did this guy like actually get into a win-in scenario? And he did not. But still, shout out to Ricardo.
Shout out Ricardo
for doing this.
Eternatus is it's a Pokemon that I know I spoke on the tier list about, thinking that it had the opportunity to do well. I definitely think that this was not the set that I was expecting to do well when we see it, but very cool. I also see a little bit below we have the Zacian Regidrago team that we used to see as well. Was the Ditto a consistent part of that?
No, Ditto was definitely a new spot, and again, this is not a Scarf Ditto. They're using the Sash on it, I just think with the Zama teams in general, or at least like with the Zama Regidrago, there's so much Terra Fairy and there's so much Flutter in the format that it feels like you're only getting half effort from the Regidrago. Um, again, as the meta moves, that can change. But and also the other thing, when you're looking at a lot of these top restricted, a lot of them just love clicking Calm Mind. And if you're trying to play a late Regidrago game, that's not going to work out as well, because like that you're even if it's just the neutral damage into the Kyogre or the Terapagos, if they already have +2 defense, +3 defense, you're just not getting as much out of it as you want to. But again, as the format moves, we'll probably see pockets where Regidrago will be viable and very powerful. Could be next week. Who can say?
Could be.
Yeah. And with that, Jay, take us out of here before we turn into just, honestly, at least for me,
Goblins.
the worst possible. The worst possible, like the bare minimum of what you can call a human being.
Yeah, Angelo is a Philadelphia sports fan, which that would be the exact definition of a Philadelphia sports fan. Bare minimum of a human being. So
never changing. Actually, don't even pray for me. Pray for my wife, who will probably be sitting and watching this game with me as she watches me go through every single human emotion possible.
Yeah, pray for his wife, everybody. Let's hope Angelo does not start flinging fists tonight.
Oh, I will not. No, not that bad. Who am I? No, Jesus Christ, not that.
You are a Philadelphia sports fan, my friend. That is like the favorite pastime.
No, that's no. It's San Diego that, not San Diego, San Francisco that happens.
San Francisco. Okay, fine. You guys like knocking over telephone poles and committing city crime.
Temple campus is always on fire. Doesn't count.
Looting.
Take us out of here.
Thank you all so much for watching. Leave in the comments down below. Good luck for our teams tonight, and Angelo's liver. I don't drink anymore, so mine's safe. Also, let me know why I'm so awesome for beating all the Dark Souls. I didn't talk about that today, but I did do that. So
next week,
tell me why I'm so awesome. Like and subscribe as well. Come and hang out in the community Discord. We are very active right now, and there's a lot going on, so it's been a lot of fun lately. Go and check out our Blue Sky at Littleroot Lessons. Angelo keeps us updated over there and is fantastic at that, as per usual. And check out the Patreon and Discord supporters links. With that, it is time for us to go and turn from Pokemon to football and be ready for the divisional round. So see you all later.
Bye, everyone. Go Birds.
Go Birds.